Life is not always fair. People will hurt you. Some will betray your trust, break your heart, and leave you wondering why God allowed it to happen. Maybe you've been lied to, taken advantage of, or abandoned when you needed someone the most. And in those moments, it's natural to ask, where is God? Why isn't He doing something about this? But let me assure you, God sees, God knows, and God is never indifferent to your pain. He is not just watching from a distance. He is actively working behind the scenes. The way He deals with those who hurt you is not always instant, but it is always just. His timing is perfect, and His justice is sure. Today, I want to show you how God moves on your behalf when you've been wronged, and how you can walk in His peace no matter what others have done to you. You may feel like nobody understands what you've been through. Maybe the person who hurt you got away with it. Maybe no one believes your side of the story, but God does. He saw the conversations behind your back. He knows the lies that were told. He saw every tear you cried when no one else was watching, and He has not forgotten. There is nothing hidden from God. He is the God who sees all, hears all, and knows all. Every whisper spoken in secret, every plan devised against you, every action taken to bring you harm, none of it is invisible to Him. People may deceive others, they may manipulate situations, and they may even think they have covered their tracks, but God is never fooled. He sees what happens in the dark just as clearly as what happens in the light. He knows the motives behind every action and the truth behind every lie. When you have been wronged, it's easy to feel powerless. It's easy to believe that justice will never come, that those who hurt you will continue to prosper while you suffer. But God's word assures us that He is a God of justice. He does not turn a blind eye to evil. He does not sit back and allow wickedness to go unpunished forever. Even when it seems like nothing is happening, God is working behind the scenes. He is setting things in motion, aligning events, and preparing to bring about His justice in His perfect time. Think about Hagar in the Bible, a woman who was mistreated and cast out into the wilderness. She was alone, abandoned, and without hope. But in her pain, God appeared to her and gave her a name to remember, El Roi, which means the God who sees me. She was never truly alone. God had been watching over her the entire time, and He provided for her in ways she never expected. Just like Hagar, you are not forgotten. God sees your suffering, and He will provide for you in your time of need. Sometimes God allows injustice to go on longer than we would like. We want immediate consequences, immediate accountability, and immediate repayment for the harm done to us. But God's ways are not our ways, and His timing is not our timing. He sees the full picture. He knows what He is doing. Just because you don't see His hand moving right now doesn't mean He isn't at work. He is patient, but He is also just. Those who seem to be getting away with wrongdoing are only experiencing temporary freedom. God will deal with them in His own time. One of the most difficult challenges is trusting God when the person who hurt you seems to be thriving. You may see them moving forward in life, smiling, successful, and without a care in the world. It can feel like they are being rewarded for their actions while you are left picking up the pieces. But don't be deceived. What you see is not the full story. God is not mocked, and every action has consequences. Even if it takes years, justice will come. God's justice is not always immediate, but it is always sure. Sometimes He allows people to experience the consequences of their actions in ways they never expected. Sometimes He brings them to a place of repentance and transformation. Other times He removes them from positions of influence or allows them to fall into the very traps they set for others. But make no mistake, no one escapes the justice of God. No one can outrun His judgment. It's important to remember that God's justice is not always about punishment. It is about setting things right. He is a God of restoration. He doesn't just see the wrong that was done to you, He also sees how He can bring healing and wholeness to your life. He is not only concerned with dealing with those who hurt you, he is also concerned with lifting you up, blessing you, and making sure that what was meant to harm you ultimately works for your good. You may not see the full picture now, but one day you will look back and realize that God was working all along. He was protecting you from dangers you couldn't see. He was leading you away from relationships that would have destroyed you. He was using the pain to build strength and wisdom within you. What felt like injustice was actually God positioning you for something greater. God knows how to handle people far better than you ever could. He knows their weaknesses, their secrets, and their hearts. He knows how to humble the proud, correct the wrong, and bring people to account for their actions. This is why he calls us to let go of vengeance and trust him instead. When you take matters into your own hands, you step outside of his plan, but when you surrender the situation to him, you allow him to work things out in ways beyond your imagination. If you are struggling with feelings of anger, resentment, or frustration because of what was done to you, take comfort in the fact that God is aware of every detail. Nothing has escaped his notice. Nothing has been overlooked. He is working on your behalf, even in the silence. Keep trusting him, keep walking in faith, and know that his justice is always on time. Pain is never wasted in God's hands. What you've been through, what broke you, what caused you to question everything, none of it is meaningless. God sees the tears you cried when no one else did. He knows the weight you carried when you felt like you couldn't go on. And in his divine plan, he takes even the most painful moments of your life and turns them into something that serves a greater purpose. Every struggle, every heartache, and every disappointment is shaping you. It's preparing you for something bigger than you can see right now. God doesn't cause pain, but he allows it for a reason. He allows certain trials to strengthen you, certain losses to redirect you, and certain struggles to refine you. What feels like a setback is often a setup for something greater. The things that hurt you the most are often the very things that push you toward your destiny. When you look at the stories of great men and women in the Bible, none of them fulfilled their purpose without first experiencing pain. Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. But every hardship prepared him for the position God had in store for him. If Joseph had never faced betrayal, he would have never ended up in Egypt. If he had never been falsely accused, he would have never met the people who would later bring him before Pharaoh. And if he had never been imprisoned, he would have never been elevated to the second most powerful position in the land. What seemed like years of suffering was actually God preparing him for his destiny. Your pain is not the end of your story. Right now, you may not understand why certain things had to happen the way they did. You may feel like your prayers went unanswered or like you were abandoned in your hardest moments. But God was there the whole time. He was shaping you, molding you, and strengthening you for something beyond what you can comprehend. The very things that wounded you deeply are the things God will use to elevate you. Pain has a way of drawing you closer to God. When everything is going well, it's easy to rely on your own strength, but when life breaks you, when you have nowhere else to turn, that's when you begin to see God in ways you never have before. Pain strips away the distractions, the illusions of control, and the things that don't truly matter. It forces you to lean on God, to seek him, and to trust him in ways you never did before. And in that process, he reveals himself to you in ways that change you forever. Some of the greatest ministries, businesses, and movements were birthed from pain. People who have gone through intense suffering often come out of it with a new mission, a new perspective, and a deeper sense of purpose. The wounds they endured become the foundation of their calling. The loss they suffered becomes the driving force behind their work. The struggles they faced equip them to help others who are walking through the same battles. Nothing is wasted in God's hands. You may not realize it now, but the pain you've endured has given you something valuable. It has given you wisdom, compassion, and resilience. It has given you a testimony that will inspire and strengthen others. It has shaped you into someone who can stand strong when the storms of life come. Every tear, every heartbreak, and every sleepless night has been shaping you into the person you were meant to be. Pain teaches you things that comfort never could. It teaches you to appreciate what truly matters. It reveals who is really there for you. It helps you recognize what is temporary and what is eternal. It develops patience, endurance, and faith in a way that nothing else can. The seasons of struggle are often where you grow the most. They force you to develop the kind of strength that only comes through experience. What was meant to break you will become the thing that builds you. What was meant to silence you will become the thing that gives you a voice. What was meant to destroy you will become the thing that fuels you. God specializes in taking what the enemy meant for harm and turning it into something good. Your pain will not be wasted. It will be used for a purpose far greater than you can see right now. God does not allow suffering without a reason. He is not careless with your life. Every hardship you have faced has been shaping you into the person He created you to be. Every difficulty has been refining you, strengthening your character, and preparing you for what is coming next. There is no wasted season in God's plan. Everything has a purpose. When you surrender your pain to God, He turns it into power. When you stop seeing your wounds as limitations and start seeing them as tools for growth, everything changes. The things that once made you feel weak become the things that make you strong. The experiences that once made you feel broken become the things that make you unshakable. You were not meant to stay in your pain. You were meant to rise from it stronger and more purposeful than ever before. God sees every injustice, every betrayal, and every attack against you. He is not blind to what has been done in secret, nor is He deaf to the words spoken against you. When people plot against you, when they try to bring you down, when they deceive and manipulate for their own gain, know this: God is watching. He is not a passive observer. He is the righteous judge, and He will deal with those who have wronged you in His perfect timing. It is in our human nature to want to fight back, to seek revenge, to expose those who have hurt us. But God calls us to a different response. He calls us to trust Him, to step aside and to let Him handle it. When you take matters into your own hands, you risk stepping outside of God's plan. You risk lowering yourself to their level. But when you surrender the battle to God, you allow Him to move in ways you never could. His justice is far greater than anything you could orchestrate. God knows the hearts of your enemies. He sees their motives, their thoughts, and the reasons behind their actions. He understands the depths of their deception, their cruelty, and their selfishness. No one fools God. People may pretend, they may put on a false image, but they cannot deceive the one who created them. He knows every secret sin, every hidden agenda, and every whispered lie. Nothing is concealed from Him. It is tempting to want to prove yourself, to defend your name, to set the record straight. But God has a way of exposing truth at the right time. What is done in the dark will be brought to the light. Those who have wronged you will eventually have to answer for their actions. Whether in this life or the next, no one escapes divine justice. God's timing may not be our timing, but His judgment is always perfect. Holding on to bitterness and anger only hurts you. It drains your energy, steals your peace, and keeps you trapped in the pain of the past. God does not want you to carry that burden. He wants you to release it to Him, to trust that He will handle it, and to move forward in peace. When you let go of the need to seek revenge, you free yourself from the control of your enemies. You no longer allow their actions to dictate your emotions. You rise above it, knowing that God is fighting on your behalf. There is a difference between weakness and surrendering the battle to God. It is not weakness to walk away from those who mistreat you. It is not weakness to let God handle it. True strength is found in trusting Him. True faith is found in believing that He will bring justice in His way, in His timing. You don't have to waste your time trying to make things right. God will. You don't have to carry the weight of vengeance. God already has a plan. Sometimes God will deal with your enemies by removing them from your life. Sometimes He will allow them to experience the consequences of their own actions. And sometimes He will humble them in ways you never expected. The very people who tried to destroy you may one day need your help. The very ones who mistreated you may one day come to regret it. God has a way of turning things around in ways that no human effort ever could. The Bible reminds us that vengeance belongs to the Lord. That is not just a phrase, it is a promise. When He says He will repay, He means it. Your job is not to seek revenge, but to stay focused on your path. While your enemies are busy scheming, you stay busy growing. While they are caught up in their own destruction, you keep walking in obedience. While they are consumed by their bitterness, you keep your heart free. That is how God wins the battle for you. God's justice is not always immediate, but it is always sure. Some people seem to prosper despite their wrongdoing, but do not be deceived. Nothing goes unnoticed by God. He is patient, giving people time to repent, but there comes a day when the consequences of their actions will catch up with them. Those who mistreat others, who spread lies, who manipulate and deceive, eventually their own choices will bring them down. No one can outrun the justice of God. Even when it seems like your enemies are getting away with what they've done, trust that God is still in control. He is not ignoring your pain. He is not dismissing your suffering. He is working behind the scenes in ways you cannot see. Sometimes His justice comes in the form of removing people from positions of power. Sometimes it comes through their own downfall, and sometimes it comes through their own realization of what they have done. However it happens, trust that God is handling it. When you stay faithful, when you keep your heart pure, when you refuse to be consumed by hatred, you allow God to work in your life. Without obstruction, your enemies cannot stop what God has for you. They may try to delay it, they may try to block it, but they can never take away what God has destined for you. When He lifts you up, no one can bring you down. When He prepares a table before you, no one can take your seat. The more you trust Him, the more you will see His hand move on your behalf. Forgiveness is one of the hardest things God calls us to do, especially when the wounds are deep and the betrayal is personal. It goes against our human nature to let go of pain, to release resentment, and to offer mercy to those who have caused us harm. But God commands us to forgive, not as an act of weakness, but as an act of strength. Forgiveness is not about excusing what was done to you. It is not about pretending that the pain didn't happen. It is about setting yourself free from the chains of bitterness that can poison your heart and steal your peace. When God calls you to forgive, He is not asking you to approve of the wrongdoing. He is not asking you to say that what they did was okay. Forgiveness does not mean you have to trust that person again. It does not mean you have to allow them back into your life. Some people are too toxic, too harmful, and too destructive to be given access to your heart again. Forgiveness is not for their benefit. It is for yours. It is about refusing to let their actions define your future. It is about reclaiming your joy and refusing to be held hostage by what was done to you. God understands your pain. He knows how deeply you have been wounded. He does not dismiss your suffering or minimize your struggle, but He also knows that holding on to anger and resentment will only destroy you from the inside out. Bitterness does not heal wounds, it deepens them. Unforgiveness does not make you stronger, it makes you a prisoner of the past. That is why He calls you to release it, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. There is a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiveness is your responsibility, but reconciliation is not always possible. Some people are not sorry. Some will never change. Some will continue to hurt you if given the chance. That is why forgiveness does not mean allowing yourself to be mistreated. It does not mean tolerating abuse. You can forgive someone from a distance. You can release them from your heart without giving them access to your life. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it is a choice. If you wait until you feel like forgiving, you may never do it. Your emotions may tell you to hold on to the anger, to seek revenge, to make them pay for what they did. But forgiveness is not about what they deserve. It is about what God commands. It is about trusting Him to be the ultimate judge. He sees everything. He knows the full story. He knows the motives of the heart. When you forgive, you are not letting them off the hook. You are placing them into God's hands. God does not ignore justice. He does not overlook wrongdoing. He is a righteous judge, and He will deal with those who have caused harm. Forgiveness does not erase consequences. It does not mean that the person will not face accountability for their actions. Some wounds leave scars, and some betrayals come with permanent damage. God does not expect you to pretend that nothing happened, but He does call you to release the weight of vengeance and to trust Him to handle it in His way. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Some lessons should not be forgotten. Some experiences shape you, make you wiser, and teach you how to protect yourself in the future. God does not call you to erase your memory. He calls you to be free. Free from the burden of carrying hatred, free from replaying the pain over and over in your mind, free from the need to control the outcome. Forgiveness allows you to move forward without the past controlling you. There is power in forgiving those who hurt you. It removes their control over your emotions. It stops them from occupying space in your mind. It breaks the chains that keep you connected to the pain. When you forgive, you reclaim your power. You no longer allow what they did to dictate your joy. You choose healing over hurt. You choose freedom over bondage. You choose God's way over the world's way. Jesus set the ultimate example of forgiveness. Even as He was being crucified, He cried out, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He did not approve of their actions. He did not excuse their cruelty, but He chose to release them to God. That is the model He gives us, not because the pain isn't real, but because the power of forgiveness is greater. Forgiveness is an act of faith. It is trusting that God sees, that He knows, and that He will handle it. It is believing that justice belongs to Him. It is knowing that letting go does not mean losing, it means winning. Winning your peace, winning your healing, winning your future. It takes strength to forgive, but the reward is a heart that is free from the weight of resentment. There will be moments when the pain resurfaces, when the memories come flooding back, when the temptation to hold on to the anger is strong. In those moments, you must remind yourself of why you forgave. Not for them, not because they earned it, but because you refuse to let their actions define your life, because you are choosing peace over pain. Because you are walking in obedience to God's command, and in doing so, you are walking in freedom. Maybe today you're carrying the weight of past wounds. Maybe you've been hurt deeply, and it feels like justice will never come. But hear this, God is still writing your story. He has the final say. The pain they caused will not have the last word. God will. So what do you do now? You trust Him. You keep walking forward. You release the offense and say, God, I give this to you. I trust that you will handle it. And then you live in the freedom that comes from knowing that no one, not even those who hurt you, can stop God's plan for your life. Today, I challenge you, let go of bitterness. Stop waiting for an apology that may never come. Release the need for revenge. Trust that God is handling it, and then walk boldly into the future He has for you, because no attack, no betrayal, and no injustice can stop what God has already set in motion in your life. God will deal with those who hurt you. Your job is to heal, grow, and keep moving forward. Are you ready to do that today?